My name is Josie Yanguas, and it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to the third and final day of the Bilingual Directors Meeting in person. So it's lovely to see all of you here. I'll have you know that today is the highest registered day. So we're just delighted to have so many people here present with us today. So I want to make sure that my presentation comes up. Thank you so much. So I want to, before we go further, and I know I'm going to be introducing Joanne Clyde in a little while and thanking Joanne profusely for all of her extensive planning here. But before I do that, I need to absolutely acknowledge all the hard work and of staff from the Illinois Resource Center for this event. And in particular, the behind-the-scenes people that we have here that include Sylvia Rogel, who many of you saw yesterday, introduce our keynote speakers, to our project manager, Lynn O'Shiff, to our communications person, Lindsay Ennett, to other admin assistants, Rosie Garcia, Nina Baginski, Dan Harker, our AV gentleman, Gulliver Sakimox, and people who are not even here, Kim Scannell and Louisa Finberg. All those individuals really help make sure that this event goes further. And so I wanted to make sure to acknowledge all of them and their hard work for this event. Oh, thank you. Yes, they deserve a round of applause. And there were a few other people who deserve a round of applause that I'm going to be spotlighting now, because I want to take this opportunity of being at the podium to both spotlight a few other people and also do some, now that I have your attention, to spotlight a few housekeeping pieces in case you weren't watching the scrolls earlier. So number one, please wear your masks. Except when you're, of course, when you're eating. We do ask that you maintain social distancing. The hotel's done a lovely job of maintaining social distancing in the rooms, and so we want to make sure to continue that. If you came here, if you parked here in the parking lot, make sure you pick up a voucher at registration so that it'll be free. So all you need to do is pick up the voucher registration, and it'll be free for you. You'll all notice that you've got a dot on your badge, hopefully, a colored dot. And you might be wondering, why do I have a colored dot? And so if you're, we've been repeating this throughout the conference, but if you're a blue dot, it means that you're a new bilingual director. If you have a yellow dot, it means that you're a director with 3 to 5 years of experience. If you have a red dot, it means that you're a seriously experienced director. And so we ask blue dots if you have a question, you should seek out people with yellow and red dots. Or in yellow and red dotted people, please, if you see a blue dot person looking a little concerned with their brows furrowed, maybe ask them what's wrong or if they have a question. I'm sure they would appreciate the support. And finally, there's several of us who have green dots. We don't know quite how to classify ourselves. We're happy to try to answer any question possible. So, but that's a little visual aid to help you in networking. I also wanted to point out that there's essentially, there's a digital platform that has all the information for this conference called Crowd Compass. You should have all received it when you all registered, and you receive a registration from, I believe it's IRC registration. It allows you access to Crowd Compass. Well, on Crowd Compass, it'll have not only a digital version of these proceedings, it'll have presenters' handouts. We're continually updating that platform. There are a number of pre-recorded presentations that are up there as well that you should take advantage of, both from ISBE and from other agencies. And also major sessions, all the general sessions, including this one, are being recorded and will be uploaded to Crowd Compass, as well as a whole series of the breakout sessions are being recorded and will be uploaded. Should be up hopefully by tomorrow, all of those presentations. So in case you missed a session or you wanted to hear something again, it'll be there in a recorded fashion. So, as well as people's handouts. One other reminder that you can access through Crowd Compass is that Tomorrow and Friday is an opportunity to have one-on-one appointments with your ISBE consultants. And so I know those appointments are filling up quickly. If you'd like, and you haven't made an appointment yet, go to there's a Google Doc that you can, for each consultant, that you can sign up for. And if you don't even know who your consultant is, there's even a link there that tells you who your consultant is to sign up. And if all the appointments are filled up, then we ask that you please sign up with them separately. And I think that's it as far as, a couple of other announcements. Today at the end of the day, you're going to be receiving a email with the evaluation for this event. Please make sure to fill that out. We want your feedback. And for those of you then who need an evidence of completion form, PD hours, you'll then get that form after you fill out the evaluation. All right? So I think that's it as far as Keynote, little housekeeping things that are concerned. So I've already thanked some of the behind-the-scenes people from IRC. I also want to thank we have a wonderful staff of education specialists here at the IRC that we want you to take advantage of. So, since the pandemic, IRC has sponsored, we've been essentially having all of our professional development done virtually. We've been, our free workshops that are offered to teachers and educators who are serving English learners are taking place virtually, generally in the afternoons, because we realize that there's issues around sub-coverage, and so we figured this would be the most convenient time to do professional development for your teachers. And I'm going to go, these are some upcoming sessions that are taking place with our staff, and this way it'll give me an opportunity to spotlight them. So for example, we have the wonderful Elizabeth Trost, who's doing a presentation next week on October 13th on issues related to SLIFE students. So, and that's going to be from 3:30 to 5:30 next Wednesday, for example. And the way these are working is that there's both a live webinar that people can participate in and get evidence of completion time, as well then as an optional additional time for professional development for optional additional activities to do in connection with that webinar, so they can get additional hours as well. So another one that we have is with another virtual event is with Rachel Anderson on translanguaging, and all of this information is available on the IRC website, but I just wanted to highlight some of these for you right now that are coming up. So that's going to be on the Tuesday the 19th on translanguaging in schools. There's also with Christina Sanchez Lopez, Aprendizaje en Español para grados tercero a quinto. That's going to be on October 21st. Again, another couple of hours, so that's a session entirely in Spanish. Our wonderful Maggie Essig is going to be doing a presentation on November 1st on using technology with multilingual learners. And I also want to do a shout out to Maggie that Maggie's been working this year in conjunction with the Illinois Principals Association. For those of you who are looking for Admin Academy, they are available, again, also through, you register through the Illinois Principals Association, but Maggie does that on behalf of IRC to get Admin Academy accredit. I know Admin Academy accredit is sometimes a really something very difficult for administrators to get, and the best part about it is that this is free because as part of our contract with the state board, so that's something to for you to keep your eyes open on. There's Michelle Yanong. Michelle's doing her presentation on, God bless her, on Sunday, November 14th. So for those of you who just want to be, have your teachers be on 24/7, here's the opportunity for someone to be working and learning on the weekends. And she's doing it on supporting bilingual learners in guided reading. And one of our newer specialists, Alicia Brienzo, who's very, very interested in issues of family engagement. She's doing a presentation on November 16th, and that's a new strand of activities that we're very excited to be really spotlighting this year. And one of our other new staff members, Aliciaspina, is going to be having monthly virtual collaboration opportunities. This is very much more informal. They're going to be taking place for educators and leaders serving multilingual learners. They're going to be taking place at specific times. These virtual collaboration opportunities, and you have it. It's at a regular time every month. Some are the first Saturday of the month at 9 a.m., the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m., and the first Thursday of the month. So there, you just need to contact Carly at cspina@centermail.org. She'll send you the Zoom link and you can participate. This is yet an alternative way of connecting with other educators. I did want to make some announcements about some upcoming events. So I know we've been getting questions about the ESSA Multilingual Illinois Conference, and in part because of the severe sub shortage and advice that we were receiving from some district superintendents, we're once again going to do a virtual conference combining both ESSA and Illinois Multilingual. That's going to be February 22nd to the 25th. So we'll be sending out more information, but just for you to make a note of those dates. I am extremely hopeful that our Bilingual Parents Summit will be in person, once again at the Oak Brook Hilton on Saturday, May 7th. So please put that date in your calendar. That's always been a fun event and also a very educational event. And I believe some school districts include it as part of their BPAC training and meetings that parents can attend. So it's a great way for parents to network with one another if you haven't had parents from your district participate. And it's a very, very fun event. A great way to start off the month of May. As you know, IRC also offers, in tandem with National Louis University, all the courses needed for the ESL or bilingual endorsement. There's also a combination of courses for those. You might have some special ed folks in your special ed resource teachers that might need either the ESL or the bilingual special ed approval that uses some of the endorsement courses. So if you're interested in that, you can please seek us out. I was heartened to see about how you can use ESSER dollars, and I believe it was Title II dollars to help finance courses perhaps for teachers in your districts. And if I've just made a mistake, I'm sure Joanne will correct me on that. So, but I know we've been seeing more and more interest of school districts to finance cohorts in recognizing especially that it'd be great to have general ed teachers receive their ESL endorsement. So we're happy to have conversations with you about that. And now I wanted to move to that part of the agenda that's related to different opportunities for you to participate as an educator here in Illinois. And I'm going to try and do my level best to cajole you, please, to participate in some of these upcoming meetings. So, every year, and I always associate this with November, but this year they've moved it up. Every year there's an opportunity to give ISBE your input about the FY23 budget. So you can, if you're a person that doesn't like to testify in person, which you can also submit written testimony about where you think some of the financial priorities for ISBE should be. And I've put that down. You can find more information about how to submit testimony there at the bottom here. It's on www.isbe.net/budget. But there is an opportunity as early as next week to participate in a virtual budget hearing. Talk to your other fellow administrators in your district and find out what are priorities that you think ISBE needs to focus on. You do need to register by October 11th for the October 14th date, and that's in the late afternoon. And then there's another opportunity on October 21st, more during the afternoon. And again, you need to register ahead of time. But really, this is an opportunity for you to say where you think discretionary dollars should be used by ISBE for the FY23 budget. And so there's always a lot of input from from many organizations. And so I know that it would be great to also have, there's always input regarding English learners, but I think especially when it comes from the district level, it really is so important and really crystallizes for the ISBE budget and committee what are some of the issues that districts are dealing with. So please participate in that. If you were here yesterday, Natasha Wilkins from ISBE, I think she's with the finance department, or Joanne is saying yes. So this is yet another opportunity for you to fill out a survey regarding, they're looking at a redesign for the EBF spending plan. And again, this is an opportunity for you to provide your input. They especially want to see how to streamline this resource allocation planning for students. And so I've put down the form there at the bottom. We'll be uploading this presentation, I'm sure, to Crowd Compass so that you can access this survey. But again, this is another opportunity. It's a relatively short Google form for you to fill out that I would suggest that you consider looking at. So, and again, I would say anytime that ISBE asks you for your input, please take advantage of it, especially because the EL voice needs to be heard, and these are great opportunities for that type of work. And finally, I have the pleasure to serve as the chairperson of the Illinois Bilingual Advisory Council here in the state. I do want to acknowledge that there are many of my colleagues, I think here in the audience, and if they're going to be, not all of them are here, but if they are here, I'd like for them to at least wave to you, because then you can rush to them and tell them what are some of your concerns that the Bilingual Advisory Council should talk about. So I know their council members consist of many of you who are bilingual directors, and it includes Jorge Macias from Chicago Public Schools, Yesenia Sanchez, who's a chief academic officer out of North Chicago, Annette Acevedo, who's now a middle schools administrator in Elgin, Jean Barbarente, the superintendent from DuPage High School District, Shadia Salem from North Palos. I think Shadia is here. Oh, there's Shadia. Thank you, Shadia. Sarah Saeed from the Elgin Math and Science Academy is also on the council. Viadelda Junquez, I think she should be here, from Champaign is on the council. Josh Perdomo from CCSD 59 is on the council. Thank you, Josh. Yes, these people deserve your applause because this is above and beyond. Well, and I should have said, hold your applause. Jeremy Burnham. Anybody who knows Jeremy knows what a wonderful person he is. Thank you, Jeremy Burnham. Thank you. Yes. Guadalupe Ricconi from Urbana is here. There's Lupe. Thank you, Lupe. And I don't know if Ernesto Saldivar Jr. from Proviso Township High School District 209 is here. These are some of your council members who are current administrators in school districts. Make sure to thank them, but make sure to also give them an earful of what you think the council should be talking about. I've listed for you on this PowerPoint when our next meetings are coming up. Our next meeting is going to be November 30th. There's always a virtual link to these meetings, although we also do have a public location, as well as March 11th in the morning and June 10th. We also have committee meetings, including on early childhood and bilingual special ed and secondary. All of this information gets posted on Multilingual's website, and so it's important for you to be, if you're looking to either participate, these are all meetings that are open to anybody who'd like to participate in. Feel free to reach out to me or any of these fellow council members to talk to them about this. So I think that's the end on my announcements. So it's now my pleasure to ask Joanne Clyde to come up to the podium. Hopefully I won't be grabbing her papers here. So I haven't. I have to tell you that it's been such a pleasure working with Joanne on this event, including last year's event. As some of you may have heard me on Monday say, Joanne and I barely got a chance to meet each other in person before the pandemic hit. And so it's been wonderful to have Joanne's input. She's been involved on this meeting from the very beginning, from the biggest ideas to the smallest details. And it's been such a pleasure working with Joanne in such a collaborative fashion. This truly is, as was last year's, this really reflects Joanne's thinking and mindset, especially as she's walked in your shoes. And so we at the IRC have been really grateful for all of this opportunity to be collaborating with Joanne and with her and with the staff, her staff, as well as with other fellows at ISBE. So we really appreciate that. So thank you, Joanne, for all you've done for the state of Illinois for our English learners. And here, take it away.
Thank you, Josie. That was very, very kind, and I appreciate it. So, welcome to day 3 of the State Bilingual Directors Meeting. And today is the this general session is the one that I've been most nervous about, and I joked yesterday, and it's been a joke that I've had since we started planning this. I really wanted to make sure Josie didn't have any projectiles available for you to throw at me. So we're going to, the topic of today is our compliance monitoring process, which I've been in a district that's been monitored, and it's always a pain. I get it, like it's, you know, you're getting everybody together, you're going through all the records, you've got to deal with state people that you don't know exactly what they're looking for, and oh my gosh, like we have to stop everything and get this done. So the pandemic necessitated that the Board of Education pivot and look at our process and where we can improve it. I heard a quote recently that the pandemic was a wonderful opportunity for creativity, which I think is trying really hard to find the silver lining, but it's true. And it's evident not only in the work that we did here at the Board of Education, but in the work that you do in your schools and in your classrooms and in your districts. The pandemic has truly been an opportunity for creativity. So we had to take a look at our compliance monitoring process. And how do we do this when everybody is remote? How do we do this in a way that makes effective use of Board of Education employees' time, as well as not be too impactful onto your time? So we're going to go through our new process with you to help you kind of understand what our thinking is, what we're going to be looking for, and the resources we've developed to help make this process less painful. I cannot guarantee that there won't be any pain, because compliance monitoring, right? There's it's hard to be happy-go-lucky. Oh boy, we're getting monitored. So, all right. ISBE is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that school code and rules are being fulfilled by local education agencies. So the monitoring of the program requirements at the local level ensures compliance with regulations and assures the quality of the program and instructional delivery for English learners. It also ensures compliance with regulations and protects EL's civil rights. So there's an important function to this. We'll go back to Lau versus Nichols. As a state agency, we need to make sure that LEAs are taking steps to help English learners overcome language barriers and to have meaningful participation. We're looking at Plyler versus Doe, which holds that states and/or LEAs cannot constitutionally deny students a free public education on account of immigration status. We're looking at Castaneda versus Picard. We're looking for, is the program based on sound educational theory? Is it implemented effectively with sufficient resources? And is it regularly evaluated to determine effectiveness? So in this general session, we're going to go over 3 main topics. The selection criteria, how are we picking you? The monitoring resources we've developed, and the steps in the monitoring process. So first we're going to talk about selection criteria. And let me see if this works. All right, so on Mentee, please go to www.mentee.com, and I want you to use the code 18661095. If you were the state of Illinois and you had to pick a criteria to select districts for monitoring, what would you look at? What data? What aspects of English learners' instruction would you pick for us to look at? Sure, the code again is 18661095. 18661095. Again, 18661095. I see a lot of really good risk factors in here. Progress monitoring tools, curriculum, number of ELs, size, programming, access scores, the size of the district, MTSS resources given. So there's a lot of different risk factors, a lot of different things to look at. The problem is, and maybe you've done this, when you're looking at 10 or 11 different risk factors at the same time, and you start calculating them out, everybody ends up looking the same. It's not helpful. So you have to narrow it down to 1, 2, or 3 things to really be able to target. So we went through a process as a team. What of these are things that the district can control? All right? As a district, can you control the number of English learners that move into your district? So why should we pick you based on that? You can't control it. Right? But can you control your English learners' progress to proficiency? That's your academic instruction, right? So that would be something that is you guys can control. And if we focus on that and we use that to identify those districts, like that's something that you then can take and change and impact your programs. So we really wanted to find those risk factors that are under the control of a district, that a district can tweak something in order to improve and make a difference in the lives of our English learners. So, switch back to the slide. So the first thing we chose is English learner progress to proficiency scores. Our second risk factor is the disproportionality of duly identified students. And I'm going to go through each of these in more detail. And the third is looking at the documentation that districts have submitted to the state, including your bilingual service plans, if we've gotten any complaints that we've had to investigate, your grant applications, and then in here is a high number of parent refusals. Now, districts in Illinois that have the largest number of English learners will be monitored more frequently. So these selection criteria will not apply to like the top 5 or 6 biggest districts, but we'll use these selection criteria to pick the schools within those districts that we're going to visit. So, English learner progress to proficiency. Raise your hand if you're somewhat familiar with what this is, English learner progress to proficiency. Okay, all right. So this is a score that is used to show that ELs are making sufficient English proficiency growth each year. It is part of the accountability measures that are on your school report card. It is only calculated for for those schools who have for those ELs in a school who have 2 years of access scores, and then only for those schools who have an N of students with those 2 years of scores. I believe that the N right now is 20. Kindergarten doesn't count. So we're looking at for the way that the state is calculating these scores is they're looking at all the different schools, first, and it's growth. So first grade to second grade, based off of that growth, and then if you've got enough students, then it's calculated to EL progress to proficiency score. Now, the next question is, where do we find out this information? So in SIS, you can get to your EL progress to proficiency report. I'm going to briefly walk through how to do this. This presentation will be posted on Crowd Compass, so you will have it for later. So in SIS, you're going to click on Reports. Then you're going to go to Summative Designation. In Summative Designation, you'll click on Summative Reports. In Summative Reports, there's 3 options. The first one you're going to want to click on is Elementary/High School Summative Designation Score Report, and it's a summary. So you will then see a summary for all of the summative designations for your schools in your district. This includes for IAR, as well as for English Learner Progress to Proficiency. So when you click on that, you enter in the school year, the school. If you want to just see one school, you'd enter in the one school, or if you want to see all, you click all. And then you get a report that looks like this. The column that's highlighted is English Learner Progress to Proficiency. And it will give you a score out of 100. Let me get to my notes. The closer you are to 100, the better. Because 100 signifies that your students, all of your students, are making the yearly progress to proficiency. So this particular school, 49.27. Okay? Now, also under that summative reports, you can see the EL progress to proficiency details. That will give you, by school, the students' individual progress to proficiency scores. Now, for us at the state, we're not looking at that. For the selection compliance monitoring criteria, we're not looking at the individual student scores. But for you as a district, this is going to be useful because you can see those students who are making those 100 scores and those students who aren't. And it's a great data point to have conversations about. But that's a whole nother presentation that I'm not going to get into right now. I highly encourage you to explore those 2 reports. Now, one other thing. The English Learner Progress to Proficiency summative scores are per school. We at ISBE, in the multilingual department, are taking that and turning it into a district score. That district score is not published anywhere because your math is going to end up different from our math, and then we're going to have problems. We're taking those scores and combining them for your district to find out your score for English Learner Progress to Proficiency out of 100. And then that goes into our formula for calculating. So that's one feature of one selection criteria. The second one is disproportionality of special education students. Now, this is not the same definition. For those of you who are special ed directors, this is not the same definition of disproportionality that you use in special education. There just isn't a better word. So if we're looking at the incidence of disabilities, it should be the same because a disability is not dependent on whether a child speaks English or not. So if about 14% of your students have an IEP in your general population, we would expect to see about 14% of your English learners with a disability. If you have more than or less than, you're disproportional. So we're looking at that number. Now, please rest assured that we recognize that in small programs with only a handful of English learners, one student can send your disproportionality through the roof. All right, we get that. We're looking at that. We're paying attention to that. We're not ignoring that. So we want to make sure we're not using this criteria unfairly, because we recognize, like, if you've only got 3 ELs and one of them has an IEP, now you're at 30% disproportionality. The final thing is documentation. So our multilingual staff review your bilingual service plans. They review the EL portion of the Consolidated District Plan. They review your grant applications. They review your grant periodic reports. So as they're reviewing them, if they see things that aren't quite right, they're taking note of that. So sometimes we get bilingual service plans that show a demonstrated risk of lack of compliance. Like, there have been districts that have said, we're not even going to fill out the bilingual service plan. Huh, all right then. Risk factor. Consolidated district plans, bilingual service plans, or grant applications are consistently late or consistently full of errors. Like, that shows that someone's not really paying attention. Risk factor. And your grant periodic reports, if they don't match your grant applications, like you say you're going to do one thing and then you're reporting you did another, like, that's a problem. So that's why we have that third risk factor, is kind of this combination of all of these. We also look at whether the data that's submitted to SIS, whether that's matching information shared on your plans. We look at whether there's complaints from parents, teachers, and community members that have been submitted to ISBE. And also, if you are compliance monitored by other ISBE departments. And for example, fiscal, they come in and they do a monitoring visit, federal and state monitoring. And they find something that's of concern, they send it to us. And so that goes on to onto this risk factor. So we take all that into consideration. So now that we've got that, we've got these 3 things, we've assigned a number to them, and we've got a list. We have high risk, moderate risk, and low risk schools and districts. So for your information, to help you look when you're looking at your data, a high risk district, for the purposes of multilingual department, for selecting schools for compliance monitoring, we're going to look for EL progress to proficiency scores that are less than 40. We're going to be looking at a disproportionality difference of more than 10%. We're going to be keeping in mind, we recognize the small numbers, like that asterisk is still always there. For documentation, we're going to look at those that have a high level of concern, that our principal consultants are going, there's something going on here. There's 2 other risk factors that are high risk that are only for those high-risk schools. There are districts in Illinois that have a sizable English learner population, but they're not generating any progress to proficiency scores. How is that? That's like a red flag, like, come visit us, right? And then a really high number of parent refusals. That's also a red flag. What's going on that there's a high level of parent refusals? So those are 2 that are specific just to high risk. Okay? So moderate risk, medium risk, EL progress to proficiency indicator score kind of between 40 and 70. Disproportionality, a difference of between 5% and 10%. And then the documentation review shows a medium level of concern. And low risk would be a 70 or higher EL progress to proficiency score, disproportionality of less than 5%, and the documentation review shows few areas of concern. Now, please note that Illinois districts with the largest number of ELs will be monitored more frequently, and these selection criteria will be used to identify specific schools within the district to monitor. Now, I want you to think, I'm going to switch back over to mentee, and some people already started filling it out. Why do you think we selected these 3 factors? EL progress to proficiency, disproportionality, and documentation. Same code. Please feel free to add your thoughts. I like the answer here because they encompass the major components of a program based on district needs and demographics. The factors that you guys control and are the most problematic when they're a problem. And it is for accountability purposes. And if these things are off, it does show a lack of equity. And it's all tied to data. Thank you. All right. So, oops, switch back over. Why did we select these three factors? For what you said. Progress to proficiency can be controlled. It's your academic programming and your EL services. Disproportionality kind of ties into that special education identification process. What methods are you using to identify your English learners? And documentation is your record keeping. District actions can affect these three factors. So we have developed resources for the monitoring process. Okay? Because we don't want you to do this alone. We don't want you to all of a sudden lose your sanity and be at school until midnight every night, getting prepared for this. So, some of the resources that we've developed a compliance monitoring manual for districts to use. We have a template for specific data that we're going to be asking for. We're going to have an initial meeting with you to walk through all of the steps and answer the questions that you have. There is an LEA self-assessment report that you will be asked to fill out. And by the way, I can't repeat this enough, you can fill it out even if you're not being monitored, because it will benefit you to make sure that you know what everything's, to check your own program, to self-evaluate your programs. And then we also are using the Microsoft Teams platform in order for you to safely submit your data and information to us. So we have a webinar that will help you know how to do that. So the manual explains the selection criteria again, defines the roles and responsibilities of the district's monitoring coordinator. So when we send you the letter saying you are being monitored, we ask that you select one person who's going to be your monitoring coordinator. So we outline exactly what that person is going to be expected to do, and that is basically be the contact person for our program compliance monitors who are monitoring your district. We will provide a timeline with due dates and how the process is going to go, and we'll that monitoring manual explains what to expect at each step of the monitoring process. I want to talk about the self-assessment report. Now, this thing is pretty big, pretty long. It will be available on our website. Edwin, is it on the website already? Yes, okay, it is on the website. Please don't crash our website. Wait until you go home tonight to log in and look at it. It's if you're involved in online record message, sometimes it's called the hug of death. Everybody logs on at the same time and then the website goes down. Please don't do that. So anyway, we have this self-assessment report, which will be utilized during monitoring, and it can be a helpful tool for administrators to evaluate your own programs regularly for compliance. Now, we had this before, and when I was at the district level, I used that checklist yearly. One of my tasks, I would sit in my office, and I would pick a week, and I would just go through that checklist to make sure that I knew the answers to all those questions, and that I was able to identify where my data was and know how to get it quickly. this can be used for you. I suggest that you guys do this. It's a great exercise for you and your EL teams to go through to evaluate your programs. If I couldn't answer one of the questions or I wasn't sure, that was a flag for me as a director to look more into that. So I want to talk about some of the features of this self-assessment report. There's some information at the top of the report to help you understand what kind of evidence we're looking for. So for unit school districts, we ask that they include samples of evidence from different grade levels, primary, middle, and high school. And items marked with a P are only for attendance centers that have pre-K students. So we've got some keys up there. We define what core academic content area refers to. We also, again, here's a section, and you can see, let me see if this works, right there, the red P, and then over here, that shows that this section is just for pre-K. Note the evidence column all the way on the right. Some reference C-tab 4.4 on ISBE monitoring template. And then there's other things. When we're monitoring you, we want all of those. Okay? The column's not a menu, but this is what we're looking for, what we want you to submit to us. We don't want you to have to guess what we want to see. This isn't, what is ISBE thinking of? That just creates frustration on your part and our part, because you submit something and then we go, this doesn't show us what we're looking for, send us something else. And then you go, oh my gosh, what does ISBE want? Right? And back and forth, back and forth. This is to try to alleviate that. We're writing out explicitly what we're looking for. Now, there are some items where there are subsections. So you'll see that the rating is grayed out. So for section 8.1, you're only going to get one rating, even though there's 1A, B, C, D, E. That is to prevent you from getting 5 findings for one thing. Because that's painful. So you would only get a rating for the whole item. So even if you get one subcategory wrong, you're still going to get a finding, but you're not getting 5 findings. I also want to point out that under each of these lines, we have the citations for the federal or state legislation or rules that govern why we're looking for that. So everything we're looking for is tied back to English learner legislation and English learner rules. So the monitoring template is an Excel spreadsheet. And notice we've included specific columns for the data we're looking for, and then each tab on the bottom, and it's probably really small and you can't see it, but each tab on the bottom is for a different item number. 3.1, 3.2, 4.1, 4.3, whatever. Now, districts may choose to use their own Excel files and their own format. If you do that, though, please make sure that every column that we're looking for on our template is highlighted and easy to find on yours. Because if we can't find the information, we can't find the information. You've provided us no evidence then. Right? It's like a kid turning in a paper without a name on it. So, steps in the monitoring process. There are 6 main steps in the monitoring process. These are, ISBE and the LEA will arrange a review. The LEA will submit evidence and send out questionnaires to parents and staff. ISBE will review the evidence and conduct on-site visits and provides a summary report. The LEA submits a corrective action plan, ISBE responds to the corrective action plan, and then there's follow-up as needed. The ISBE monitors and the LEA program coordinator will work closely together throughout the process. So, the steps. First things first, we send you a letter to your superintendent. Then we'll set up this meeting. In the virtual meeting between the LEA EL program monitoring coordinator and the ISBE M&D monitor, will explain the process, explain the tools, and respond to any questions or concerns. This meeting can consist of your superintendent, yourself, and any other staff that you deem necessary to be at that first meeting. So this might be, if you are a bilingual director, you might have a couple of your key EL staff from each building that attend that meeting. Or if you are a superintendent, you might have your EL program coordinator, you might have whoever's going to help collect the evidence in that meeting. Compiling and submitting evidence. So after the meeting, you are off to compile your evidence and submit it. Now, the earlier that your evidence is submitted, the better. Once you hit the due date, once that deadline hits, whatever you've submitted is what we're using. So our monitors are going to be looking at that Teams folder regularly to see what you're sending in. And if we notice that something is not quite right or not what we're looking for, we'll reach out and say, hey, it looks like you sent us this file and it's blank. Would you want to try resubmitting it to us? And if you're selected for an on-site visit, because we're going to do two kinds of visits, and I think I forgot to mention this. We're going to do desktop monitoring, and then some districts will be selected for on-site monitoring. So desktop monitoring is all of this, and on-site monitoring is all of this, plus we come to visit. So if you are selected for an on-site visit, the earlier you submit your evidence, the more time you'll have with the principal consultants when they're there to pick their brains. We don't want to be coming to your districts and sitting in a room looking at file folders. It's a waste of our time, it's a waste of your time. When we're coming to your districts, we want to talk to you. We want to talk to you, to your directors, to your teachers, to your parents. And this is an opportunity for you to talk to us and ask us questions. Hey, we've got this problem. What can we do to solve it? Like, this is your opportunity to have one-on-one time with the monitors, because they'll be there. If we're still reviewing evidence, we may not be able to answer your questions well enough. So the earlier you submit your evidence, the better. So we're going to send you a link to questionnaires. Schools will distribute these questionnaires to administrators, teachers, and other staff and parents. They are anonymous, and they are going to be translated in the top few languages of your district. They're electronic. You could send them out through email, and then parents and or staff can complete them. There's two different versions, one for parents, one for staff. We will provide you the results of these questionnaires redacted to make sure everything's anonymous, separate from the monitoring reports. So that way you can use that feedback from parents and staff to look at your programming and to see where you can maybe needs for professional development or areas to support your families. Our goal is really for this to be a helpful process for you as well. So after the deadline, we will do our desktop review. All evidence must be submitted in the correct format, otherwise it will be rejected. If you send us one file with everything in it and not organized, we're going to miss something. And we don't have the time or the staff to go through 500 pages of random stuff and try to match it up to numbers. It's not fair to us, it's not fair to you. So we really need you to be submitting in the correct format. The time frame will depend on the size of the LEA, the scope of the EL program, evidence documents, questionnaires, and other further findings. Any items submitted after the deadline will not be reviewed. And if we see something that appears to be incomplete or missing pre-deadline, we will again reach out and say, hey, this looks like it's not quite all there. Evidence review will start the on-site review after that deadline. We'll visit selected schools. We want to go into classrooms. We want to see what's happening in the classrooms. What we're looking for in the classrooms is we're not evaluating your teachers. We're not evaluating their instructional methods. We're going in to see that we have comparable classrooms, that your ELs aren't in a closet under the stairs, right? That they have sufficient materials, that they have, if it's a bilingual program, we're looking for native language materials, right? So we want to be in your classrooms. We want to see your classrooms. We want to have in-person interviews with administrators, teachers, and parents. Possible spot checks of files. And then the multilingual department will send a summary report to the coordinator and the superintendent, which will include any findings of non-compliance that must be addressed. So step 4 and 5, a corrective action plan is submitted. The plan will outline the LEA's corrective actions to be implemented or already completed. And then we will respond to the corrective action plan. The LEA status may be designated as either fully accepted or not fully accepted. And the findings are either fully implemented or not fully implemented. We used to have fully implemented, partially implemented, not implemented. But what we found out as a multilingual team as we were going through this, we were fighting with each other. This is partially implemented. No, it's fully implemented. No, it's partially implemented. Well, I think it's not implemented. Like, it was really hard to have inter-rater reliability. And as a department, one of our goals is we want to make sure that it doesn't matter which monitor comes to your school, that we're looking at things the same way. So it's either fully implemented or not fully implemented. So the last step is we conduct a follow-up visit. The LEA is required to demonstrate full compliance with requirements within 1 year from the date the report is issued. The follow-up will be conducted to confirm full compliance. So we'll review the most recent self-assessment report. We'll review requested reports, for example, bilingual service plan. We'll review evidence documents that you submit in the review to prove that you've met, you are in compliance. We'll look at SIS, we'll look at your corrective action plan, and there might be additional on-site visits. The tools will be the same, but we'll be focusing on those areas where there were findings. So there's no need to put you through the full monitoring visit again. We're just going to look at those where you had findings. So as we come to the end of this presentation on the compliance monitoring process, I want to share some final thoughts and get some feedback from you. First, I want to point out, you'll notice that Title III was not mentioned anywhere in the selection criteria. There is a section in our monitoring for monitoring those districts that have Title III programs, but you're not safe. You're not safe from monitoring if you don't have Title III, because the selection criteria is your progress to proficiency and disproportionality and your documentation. The responsibility to educate ELs is for every district, not just those that receive Title III funds. All districts have an equal chance of being monitored if their risk factors are high enough. Secondly, compliance monitoring reports and findings are matters of public record. They can be FOIA'd. If you are a district who has a charter school within your boundaries, please share the findings with them if one of their schools was part of the monitoring visit. It's good collaboration. Now, in the past, I remember this. I remember checking yearly. There was a list of districts who were going to be monitored that year that was published. And we also previously published the findings. We are not doing that. We will not be following that practice. So you will get a letter that says you're being selected, and we'll move forward with that. Okay. So the benefits of compliance monitoring. When we come for a compliance monitoring visit, please think of this as an opportunity to find out what you are doing well, right? Because that will be on there. We'll be able to identify areas of growth for your district. And these compliance monitoring reports are so powerful as a district administrator, especially an EL administrator, who often gets ignored. I know, I was one. Like, we need to do this. No, we don't have time. It's like, yes, we do. The state said we have to do this. Oh, okay. I guess we're doing that, right? It's added weight to help you improve your programs. And monitoring tools can be used by districts for their own self-monitoring efforts. I want to tie this back to the Board of Education's strategic plan. So as I read this, I want you to think about what you've learned about the compliance monitoring process and how it ties into this. Vision of the Illinois State Board of Education. Each and every child is equipped to make meaningful contributions to society and live life to its fullest potential. Mission. Provide each and every child with safe and healthy learning conditions, great educators, and equitable opportunities by practicing data-informed stewardship of resources and policy development, all done in partnership with educators, families, and stakeholders. Equity statement. Illinois has an urgent and collective responsibility to achieve educational equity by ensuring that all policies, programs, and practices affirm the strengths that each and every child brings within their diverse backgrounds and life experiences, and by delivering the comprehensive supports, programs, and educational opportunities to succeed. So, how are you feeling about monitoring? I'm terrified that my district will be selected. Why are you punishing us? While I'm not looking forward to it, I understand the importance of how it will help my district. I think this will be very helpful. Can you come monitor us now? I will note, I had people come up to me when they found out that I was going to be coming to the board and say, could you please come monitor us? I'm like fighting with my board. I need this. Okay, good. For those of you who are terrified, please come find a program compliance monitor. We'll talk you through it. We'll talk you off the ledge. It's not going to be, hopefully, it's not going to be as painful as it used to be. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to turn this back over to Josie for her. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right. Put my mask.
Oh,
Me cubre bocas.
all right. I'm sure Joanne is delighted that there were no projectiles. I didn't even see anybody even make a motion towards that effect. So thank you, Joanne, for that. And I'm sure if you have lots of questions, that Joanne will entertain and her staff all suggestions. So if you were keeping track when I was acknowledging all my fellow IRC colleagues, there was one person who I omitted. And that was Olivia Mulcahy. And so, and I omitted her because I'm going to ask her to come up here to the stage to introduce our keynote speaker. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Olivia. Olivia's been at the IRC since, for about 8 years. She came to us from CPS. She had been in administration, and prior to that, she had been at Tepochcali School in Little Village in the city. Olivia has myriad interests and passions, including supporting students' bilingualisms and biliteracy. She loves to talk about integrating the arts wherever possible, and especially the connections, obviously, to academic and social-emotional achievement and behavior. She's been cited, especially for her work on translanguaging, in recent books, including a text that I would highly recommend called Translanguaging and Transformative Teaching for Emergent Bilingual Students from CUNY. And of course, some of you got a chance to see her do her presentation yesterday on LGBTQ students. So she's a Renaissance woman, and so I'd like to bring her up on stage to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Josie. I was only expecting to introduce, not to be introduced. So thank you so much. That was very sweet. Good morning, everyone. I'm Olivia. I work at the IRC, as you know now. I am super pleased, super honored. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Tyrone Martinez-Black. He is a practice integration specialist at the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which we probably all know as CASEL. So I'm going to read a little bit of his bio, and then I'm going to talk just a little bit, and then we'll get on with it. At CASEL, Tyrone is the MVP of representing connections and leaning into complexity for the sake of making space for everyone to thrive. So already you're seeing the connections and why we wanted him here today. Tyrone Martinez-Black seeks and solidifies the connections between our research, practice, and policy efforts. His current focus is engaging and empowering parents, caregivers, to authentically partner with school staff and community members. Tyrone leads an advisory council testing models of shared power amongst adults in homes, schools, and the broader community as co-designers and co-governors of equitable learning environments. Prior to joining CASEL, Tyrone taught middle school math and science. He also has also been an instructional coach and district administrator in those subjects. He began designing and delivering learning experiences for adults during his earliest days as an educator, and he continues to do so on a range of topics, often intersecting mathematics, equity, and SEL. Tyrone actively collaborates with fellow creatives to generate and elevate models of civic life that offer sovereignty, solidarity, and sustainability for individuals and communities. He strives to honor his immediate family as a grandson, son, husband, and father. He's a good guy, this guy. And I wanted to highlight some of the words that stand out. That is his bio that you can find on the CASEL website. But some words that stand out to me strongly from that bio are integration, connections, and intersecting. So Josie mentioned that I like a lot of things, and my interests span into a lot of places in the field and in adjacent fields. And Tyrone is like that too. I call him one of my Nepantla people. Nepantla is a Nahuatl word. It means in the middle. It means in between worlds. So it speaks to that in-betweenness. And for people like some of us, we like to move across these boundaries and really find those connections. That liminal space, that place on the edge of a process, that place in between, is a place sometimes of some chaos and some uncertainty, but it's a place of creativity, it's a place of transformation, it's a place of generation. And so I see Tyrone very much living in that space, finding those connections, generating ideas, and I walk away from every conversation with him, and I've known him for 30 years, over 30 years. I walk away from every conversation feeling enriched and inspired and challenged in my thinking. And I can't wait to see where the conversation today takes us. So let's give it up for Tyrone, and let's hear from him.
Thank you, dear. Oh. Am I on? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a clicker up here. I was told, but I don't see it. Oh, this thing? Okay, got it.
Yes.
All right. Let me test this. Oh, okay, wonderful. All right, so just to start off with, I am really hoping I can live up to that pressure. I, as Olivia said, we've known each other for a good long time, and this idea of in-betweenness is vital to all of our work, particularly those of us who are supporting people who are multilingual, right? And so I want to actually start with something that we went through, that whole compliance monitoring, everything else. I want to acknowledge that in the feedback request of you was, how does it make you feel? And I want you to pause for just a moment before I do anything and really acknowledge that there is, of course, a whole lot of business, logistics, operations, and what have you that are necessary to us fulfilling our purposes in our work. But if we don't pause for just a moment to acknowledge that there will be pain, right? So the statement was, and I loved it, was, I can't guarantee there won't be pain. And the thought that immediately ran through my mind is, I can promise you there will be. Not because it is overly difficult, complex, or anything like that, but because our brains, our bodies, and our relationships do not grow if there isn't friction, if there isn't pressure, if there isn't some energy that gives us a reason to apply whatever it is we know and have learned over the course of our lifetimes. Are you with me? All right, so what I'm here to do today, I'll explain in my slides, but I really want to make sure you understand that I am a guest in your space today. And I will do my very best to honor the collective wisdom, experience, and intelligence that you all are bringing, to which I can only hope to add my little part. And I say that deliberately because I am not here as a presenter of answers. I only have more questions. And I hope that you will at least join me in creating a culture and a community with one another where, as this guidance you received in your packet suggests, there may be lots of mistakes on my part, on your part, together, and so forth. There will be pain. But hopefully we'll all find a reason to grow from it. All right, you with me? Mm-hmm. All right, so take a moment. You don't have to close your eyes, but I do want you to think for just one single moment of a place that you have loved to go. And I want you to think about what it is that motivated your being there. And this place, I want you to think deeply about why you didn't want to return from there. This is a place you would love to simply stay. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about place, and we're going to connect, in fact, what it is to be in a place, be of a place, and express ourselves accordingly. So land, language, learning, this is what we are going to be talking about as we move through the world, move through our communities, we move through our schools. This is part of what we know. Okay, so I can present there. It's not showing up. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So I already had a little bit of introduction, and these are questions. As I said, I don't have a lot of answers, but these are questions that I would have you maybe ask of me. And over the course of our time together, I'll try to give some responses to them. So where I come from is loaded. Because I was born in Chicago, I moved immediately with my parents to Brooklyn, where I lived for 7 years. Then my parents separated, and I returned to Illinois, Chicago, 18th and Halsted, in an artist's loft, until I moved in with my grandmother and her second husband. And I say that deliberately because my mother is Mexican, mother and father. My father is black, mother and father. And I grew up in a household where the only thing that mattered, well, and I'm being a little bit facetious, but the only thing that mattered about being in a Mexican household was that I knew how to flip my tortillas on the stove right. We were of a generation where speaking Spanish in the home was actually not encouraged. And so I grew up, in fact, having no concept, really, of what it meant to come from that place, other than a handful of stories about my great-grandfather coming from Mexico and immigrating to Chicago. Right? So that starts to describe a little bit of who are my people, which includes then my father's family in South Carolina, where I went every summer since I was 3 years old. And my mother tells a story of how I would go to the airport rather, back in the day when you didn't have to get checked by anything. You're literally walking off the street with your cigarette, smoking, right? Your pets running around and what have you. And we would walk up to the boarding gate, and as soon, she promises me, as soon as we got to the gate, I was letting go, running to the plane. She was crying, where's my baby going? Is everything gonna be okay? I'm just waiting to get a deck of cards, a little pair of wings, and some crayons from the airline. Okay? And how I am called. So when I get on that plane, of course, they don't know me other than I have literally a name, and they're supposed to take care of me, right? Kind of like students when they come to you sometimes, right? First of the year, you've never met any of them before. The only thing you know about them is their name. And yet, that is not, in fact, how I am called. And what I mean by that is not only my name, but my vocation. So it is one thing to say that you are Mr. and Mrs. Doctor and Professor and so on. It's quite another thing to say that you are an educator, that you are a learner. As in my introduction, that you are a child of someone, a parent to someone else, a neighbor, and so on. So what I want for you all to do is take out whatever you like to write on. If you like to keep notes on your computer, that's fine. But I'm gonna ask you for just a moment to answer these 3 questions for yourself. If you believe you have only a short answer to any of those questions, I'm going to push you to also answer the additional question of how it is you think people know those things about you. right, finish up whatever it is you're writing. So my intentions here, and I'm going to say, again, I do this a lot actually, sorry. So I say some things and then I translate what's in my head because I didn't put it on a slide. You have done that? Okay. So I'm going to tell you out loud that I, as an educator, as a classroom teacher, complied with the notion that there should be a lesson objective. And as I taught here in Illinois and in Chicago public schools for a time, I can statements were the rule. As I eventually left the classroom, what I started to imagine for myself is that that objective was positioned as something I was going to do. And I don't know about any of you, but I would set objectives like, my students will know how to calculate areas of triangles. And over the course of an entire year, there would be students who never met that objective. And I started to believe that I was ultimately lying to them and myself that that objective was actually going to be met. And so I started considering what I do as an intention, meaning I hope that, and I will work toward this end. But I have absolutely no way of guaranteeing it because, like a classroom of 30, and you are multiples of that, I don't know what's going on with you today. I don't know what's been going on with you for the last month. I don't know what that role may play in how you're receiving what I'm saying. Or if what I'm saying are, in fact, the right words to instigate your thinking. So, if we could show the intentions once again. We're just going to explore some territory together. Again, some questions, some ideas. We're going to maybe make some connections between our experiences and what you expect to do in your practice. And certainly we're going to imagine what's possible. As was stated in the descriptions, this is two parts. What I say up here, and then what we continue at 11 o'clock, I believe. And we're just trying to make some sense of what this world of social emotional learning has to do with learning languages, right? So the idea of language, in particular in Chicago, has a lot to do with where are you from, right? Or what is this place? The fact that the name of the city in which we're inhabiting, for example, and the state in which we live, are names from indigenous peoples, means that we are, at least ideologically, migrating. We also have, in Chicago's history, DuSable as the first Black explorer to arrive, right? Another migration. Certainly, and this causes me pain, there's some slides I'm going to show, opted not to show forced migrations because that is painful to me, and I imagined it might be painful for some of us also. But we're experiencing now in 2021 the consequences of migration due to all manner of factors. We're living in a pandemic crisis because of the migration of particles we can't even see. So where we are, the places we are, our positions, right, our powers, all of those are boundaries that we maintain or we allow to evaporate. And those boundaries have an impact on how we identify, with whom we identify and who we choose to collaborate and coalesce with, right? So each of you in here have different roles, right? Different statuses. You're at different schools, different regions, use different programs, you engage in different practices, all of that. And some of those tell people, sure, you're one of us. Some of those, consciously or unconsciously, tell people, no, you don't. So when we say we're in this business of making sure that we educate to the fullest potential, right, in the vision, that doesn't mean they haven't any potential and we increase it. It means they come to us full and abundant and we make sure they stay that way. Boundaries are what systems asks us to maintain, and by default, I want you to really hear me on this one. By default, they help us to maintain our discriminations. Now, I don't say that as if having systems and having structures aren't important. They are. But our brain does a funky thing by design, by evolution. And that is, it tells the difference between one thing and another. Period. That is no judgment, right? That is no evaluation. It is simply, I can tell that somebody's shirt is red and somebody's shirt is blue. I can tell that somebody has longer hair than somebody else, right? That is discrimination. It's a brain function that evolutionarily helps keep us safe. Recently saw a documentary where, in fact, I learned, and never knew this, that tigers are particularly well equipped to hunt deer because the deer are colorblind. So the bright orange that we see, the deer sees as just another gray in the midst of all the trees and grasses and what have you. So I grew up little thinking, oh, this is the stripes. But not ever occurring to me, this bright orange thing, big muscular cat, is not visible to the animals that it's hunting. And again, I'm just thinking it's the stripes. I learned recently that it's because the eyes, right, the actual biological function of the eyes of its prey cannot discriminate it from the rest of its surroundings until it's too late. Okay, so I'm going to go fairly quickly through a narration for you. Stories matter, and we tell a story in schools, in this nation, about what this nation is. We tell a story about who we are, right? We tell a story about to whom we belong, and whether or not the shape of our eyes, the color of our skin, the accent in my voice discriminate one from another, right? So this land, we have historically, right, anthropologically, we know that there's some migration that occurred and peoples came from one place and arrived at others. Simple, straightforward. But what is movement for? And this is the part of the story that you all get to write with your students. Because like I said, I left out the slides about forced migrations. That's the loot question. Because some people are moved because they are capital. Some people are moved, again, connected to my family's history, for their labor. Farming, industry, what have you. Now, you know, we're talking about higher education, people go to schools and so on, get their degrees and what have you. For love, of course, people meet various circumstances and they move for that reason. The last one, however, is the one that we bring ourselves to 2021 and all of our historical periods when, under persecution, under fear, and other circumstances, people moved to be free. And so when we think about what it is to adopt or express languages, what are we really saying? Like I had a good friend of mine used to quote a rap lyric. It's like you talk too much, but you ain't saying nothing. And so if we're trying to be free, then the words we use matter because who we are expressed in those words matter. So these are going to go fast, but you're going to get these slides, and there's some things I'm going to skip, and you're going to be able to read them later and say, oh, okay, that's what he was talking about. Okay. So the border question, we consider that in order to be free to move, that means that these borders don't matter. And those borders, again, can be positions, power, status, location, and so forth. There was a time when, and when you look at this, the link will be in the slides, there's a color coding that goes from green to purple. It's a recency. The green is earliest, the blue and purple is the latest. There are some, oh, it didn't click, sorry. So there are some boundaries that didn't exist until 1906. I joke sometimes with my partner that I'm going to live to be 200, so I maybe will see new non-borders, but we see it, all of us lived through the Berlin Wall falling, remapping of the Soviet states, and so on, right? Borders change. Why? Because they're arbitrary. They're regional, they're linguistic, they're religious, or what have you, but they are simply people trying to make space for themselves. This is a map without boundaries in a sense, because on native lands, I'm sure many of you are familiar, if you're trying to put together a land acknowledgement, this is indigenous peoples all over the world. It's concentrated in the Americas, and you can see that those boundaries overlap. And many of them, again, forced migration. They're where they are now because somebody decided they shouldn't be where they were before. Now, this is a connection point, which is for indigenous peoples in this land, as well as other places, Aborigines in Australia, and so where there are naturally occurring elements is where there's life, right? These are our kin. And so I show this map as another way of saying, what does it look like without boundaries? What if we, in fact, mapped ourselves based on where we could live, which is where we settle, right? Which is where we have cities, because that's where we can have potable water. But if we think about other kinds of boundarylessness, the yellow spots are where we have Wi-Fi access. That is rural and urban. Blue is where we do not have access. Looking at Sylvia right here and shaking her head, and I see some of the rest of you doing the same. So what we are going to do is build an equitable learning environment. Here in Illinois and in the Chicago area generally, we think about economic status, right? We might think about language and other diversity. But there's also access to real tools and equipment and resources. Water is natural, broadband is technical, but they still separate us from one another and make it more difficult for us to, in fact, be unified. This is a transit map. And normally I would take the time to say, hey, what do you notice and you wonder about that? But I'm going to just point out something that stood out to me when I started this, which is there are places in this country that have access to nothing. And we focus a lot of our attention and equity on race, which we ought to, because this country is bluntly messed up. The mic's not working?
Your mic fell.
It fell.
It's like under your arm.
Oh, that's right. Ha-ha. Does that work? Does that work? Doesn't matter. Okay. So, again, these are considerations. Now, we have an increasingly diverse United States. The yellow is where there was lower diversity and there are large increases happening, if that makes sense to you. The blue is where there was already high diversity and it's not likely to change anytime soon. Another noticing, wondering that I would ordinarily pause for, but I want to point out, is that where there's a large amount of diversity, just happens to border Mexico. For example. Okay, this is another map of immigration on the, what side is this, right? On the right-hand side, it's indicating where the immigrants are in, right? So you see in the United States, we have a large circle because there are a lot of immigrants in our country, as compared to the one on the left, where those dots represent where the immigrants are coming from. This country and 200 years of immigration and who's been coming. And what that means about their language diversity. So there are some places in this nation, some school districts that I've happened to be able to work with, and they have 200 languages that they have to encounter. I'm going to repeat that because it always astonishes me. 200 different languages. So we're not talking about a dual language program. We're not talking about immersion. We're talking about one kid in a classroom of hundreds of kids who is the only person who speaks their language. And potentially, because of the circumstances that have brought them here, is from a family that doesn't have the literacy to support them in their native language also, right? You all know this, right? So another map, just for proportion's sake, I'm a former math teacher. Okay? So you see what it does to the map when you look at where the language diversity is actually coming from. And if we looked at some statistics today, 2021, of where people are coming from, those are the places. Those are our students. I'm going to skip over this. Is in Illinois, you see the blue is English, the orange is Spanish, yellow is Polish, and green is everything else. Right? Just the ranking of some languages in dominance and the numbers of speakers. So, to get into the connection then, I know you've been waiting for this, to social and emotional learning. We're living in an era right now where we have pundits talking about we don't want CRT in our schools, for example. And as my grandmother used to say, spell it. And what that means is you don't know the words that are coming out of your mouth, so you should stop talking. Because people who are talking about CRT may be referring to culturally responsive teaching as much as they're talking about critical race theory, but the people who are using that don't care because all they want you to do is fear that all those immigrants are coming to take away what's rightfully yours. And that immigration could be internal, because we would say the same thing if we happen to have a huge migration of poor folk from Kentucky. But we have other discrimination factors happening that says maybe that's okay, maybe it's not, right? So in a name then, we have social emotional learning. And I'm not going to have you read this, but it's going to be there for your benefit. Of course, on castle.org, you can look at the definition at some length. Boiled down to its simplest, it means that all through our lives, our entire lives, right now, you all are experiencing your emotions, your thoughts, your values, and trying to use those to make sense of where you fit in the world. And you're doing your very best, like children are as well, to find that there's a comfortable way of doing that without harming anybody else. So CASTLE has our wheel, 5 competencies. Really, if you think about it in 3 domains: self, social, and systemic, structural. Where what you want to do is be attentive to who you are, what you're about, how you're acting in the world, and paying attention to how other people do that too, so that you can responsibly work together and make, in fact, our world a better place. Now, the importance of that circle, of that wheel, is that people focus so deeply on the person and what they're responsible for. And we don't maybe take enough time to pay attention to the fact that it's happening someplace. A school, a community, a classroom, right? And you all and myself, we're responsible for making sure, as in the vision and mission that was shown earlier, we're responsible for making those environments equitable. Which means that at CASTLE, we do a lot to pay attention to study, to investigate, not only what we've said for the last 25 years about social and emotional learning, but also what people are telling us today. And one of the things that has come up again and again and again is that we have our children, language learners, for example, trying to do their very best to make this nation what it was promised to be. But they cannot do that if there are powers deliberately organized against them. Which means that when you're thinking about yourself and you're paying attention to others and you're trying to make responsible decisions, if they don't have an outcome on your civic life, then it's just feeling good and sitting in your seat. Now, I need real hands. Everybody understand what I'm saying there? Okay, I don't see hands, so I'm confused. All right. So in transformative SEL, we look at 5 very distinct focal constructs. And when we talk a little bit later, we'll go into some more detail about these. But for the time being, understand that when I am self-aware, what I'm really talking about is, do I know myself, my identity, situated in my background, my location, and so forth. My agency is my expression of self-management. It is not simply, can I behave? It is, can I determine for myself how I will be in this world? So, for example, very, very low stakes here. There is a podium up here for speaking, and I have chosen to not stand behind it. That is my choice, right? Simple, low stakes. What is also my choice is how I talk to you. And if I happen to use words that maybe you wouldn't understand, I'm unapologetic about that, because that's how I talk, right? Belonging, of course, straightforward, social awareness. Who are my people? Where am I from? My relationship skills involve collaboratively problem solving, right? The only reason to be polite to one another is so we can get some stuff done. Let me be real clear on that. In really strict terms, when my liberation is at stake, hi, how you doing is nice, but I need you to pick up this shovel. We got digging to do, right? So make it clear to yourself that there is certainly being diplomatic, being civil, and all of that. And there is also getting stuff done, which is the responsible decision making, and we have to be curious about what problems we actually need to solve. So curiosity is about having that frame of reference in your mind that looks at the world and says, I wonder if. And so you would pause and say to yourself, I wonder if we had a nation where your language wasn't a barrier to you being successful. I wonder if we could live in a nation and a world, frankly, where your accent didn't keep you from getting resources. I wonder if the fact that your family happened to come from a place where life was harder than it is here, I wonder if that didn't keep them from getting new resources here, right? And so on. So I would flash through these. We can tell stories. We're going to have more time later, so I will do that. We'll go a little bit more into what identity is, agency is, belonging, collaborative problem solving, and curiosity. This is what now I want you to just take a moment to jot down really quickly, which is, what is a burning question? Exercise your own curiosity right now. What is a burning question you have for what it means to be a language learner? And consider all of the emotional turmoil that that might induce. Consider migration and all of the relationships that are then difficult to actually make and maintain because you're from a different place. What is the responsible thing to do to actually make sure that people don't feel that way? This could be our world. Or maybe more accurately, this is our world, and we actually have to do a better job of getting used to that. Thank you, everybody. We're looking forward to talking to you some more.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much, Tyrone. I hope most of you were able to capture that when we had that little malfunction, but I think, but thank you so much. Tyrone's going to be continuing his conversation in the Balmoral Ballroom, which is just across the way. So I feel like we've all had our interest piqued, but that'll be starting at 11 o'clock. Sessions will be starting now at 11. Please make sure to take all your things from out of here, because we're going to be coming back here right after noontime for lunch. So for all the other breakout sessions. So thank you so much.